Hi, I'm making a video response to Loving Doubt. Her video is called Speaking in Tongues, Not Supernatural. And speaking in tongues is in quotes. That's why I did the annoying finger thing. Um, I'd like to respond to some of her comments about speaking in tongues. One thing is that the term glossolalia is the term that's used in the New Testament. The xenoglossolalia term to refer to speaking an actual foreign language that other people can understand supernaturally. I believe that's something from modern linguistics, modern anthropology, or modern social science, modern paranormal studies, or whatever, that would use that term. The Bible doesn't use the term, as far as I know, of xeno in connection with glossolalia. So the glossolalia that the apostles spoke and other people understood is glossolalia. So it's not glossolalia in the biblical terminology. So I'm just clarifying that issue. As far as I understand it, that's the way it is. So also some of the critiques of whether speaking in tongues is supernatural, I'd like to address them. Now some of them to a certain extent I would say are valid critiques, but they're not always true. For example, there's one professor who said that there's no intonation for glossolalia. Well, he's obviously dealing with a skewed sample, or not a very complete sample if he's never heard any intonation with glossolalia, because there are people who speak in tongues, and it's very much there's an intonation like a natural language. I have a degree in linguistics, and I've studied about 7 or 8 different languages, maybe 9. And I've lived in other countries. I've been exposed to hearing a lot of foreign languages, and I've heard speaking in tongues that sounds like a foreign language. I've heard people. One of the critiques of speaking in tongues is that people use the same phonemes, the same sounds or system of sounds from their own language when they're speaking in tongues, and they repeat them over and over again. Well, I know what you're talking about. I've heard that sort of phenomenon too, but I've also heard people use phonemes that are not from their own language. And yeah, for example, you hear if you hear a long vowel that's not a diphthong, like e, and it's not e, that's not characteristic of native speakers of American or British English. And you'll hear things like that with some people who speak in tongues. So I have heard speaking in tongues that really does sound like a foreign language to my ears, which are at least semi-trained, as with my background, my undergraduate degree. Anyway, so that I don't necessarily, the source that you're citing, I don't necessarily agree with his arguments, because I just don't think he's explored enough of the phenomenon to back up what he's saying. Now, it could be that there are psychological tongues. I believe that speaking in tongues is a genuine gift, but that doesn't mean that I think that everybody who says they speak in tongues genuinely are necessarily, or that everything out there is genuine. In fact, early Pentecostals in the Pentecostal movement were concerned that somebody says, say glory, glory, glory really fast, and they start saying it so fast they start stumbling over what they're saying, and then the other guy says, oh, you've got filled with the Holy Spirit. And I can tell you, in the movement that Loving Doubt that you were in, is the Oneness Pentecostal movement. And I don't know about your particular movement, but I think Oneness Pentecostalism is about 5% of Pentecostalism, and they're different from other Pentecostals in that they believe in they don't believe in the Trinity, and typically they believe that you're not saved, that if you're saved you will speak in tongues, that if you're a real Christian you'll speak in tongues, and most Pentecostals don't believe that. So there's a lot of social pressure to speak in tongues, and I assume there's a lot of desire on the part of people who are part of the club, part of the church, for the other people that get baptized to speak in tongues. And so this is, there's a lot of social pressure, there's a lot of motivation on the part of the person, a lot of motivation on the part of the group, and I could certainly see how there would be a lot more pressure, whether willingly or unwillingly, for somebody to generate something that they think is speaking in tongues. It may or may not be genuine, and I'm not judging any individual's experience. I'm just saying that's a conceivable possibility. Now, as far as whether speaking in tongues is supernatural or not, what's supernatural is if someone doesn't know the language and they speak in it and other people understand it. And there have been many accounts of it. I don't have a good verifiable recording myself, and I've never actually heard somebody speak in a foreign language that I know or that I've studied well enough to recognize myself. But There was a book written in 1971 by a man named Paul Harris. It's Spoken by the Spirit, colon, something or other. I don't know the whole title. And he probably didn't use social science methodology, and it was 1971. Social science methodology had probably not been quite as developed as it is now. But you know, he was I think he was may have been a preacher or something, but or a journalist or something like that. But he researched 70 accounts, mostly from the Assemblies of God or from Catholic charismatic group at that time, of speaking in tongues where other people overheard the language that was being spoken and they understood it as their own language. He interviewed people, he talked with missionaries, and there were 70 accounts that he was able to come up with. The book is downloadable online if you search around a little bit for it. There's a site that has it, and you have to ask them for the password, and they'll give you the password to unlock the ebook. So it's interesting book, interesting accounts. Like I said, it doesn't use the social science methodologies, but it's accounts of those events. It's kind of dated. If you wanted to go back and research it, that may be difficult. There are many historical accounts of people's experiences from Azusa Street, where that was a common occurrence, where people would come in to the Azusa Street revival, the birthplace of Pentecostalism, and that they would understand speaking in tongues. I've read an article in a Kansas newspaper about Alice Oxman, the first person in the Pentecostal movement, you might say, who spoke in tongues in 1901. And she spoke in German, according to the newspaper article, which is based, I suppose, on interviews with her, with a German shopkeeper, German restaurant owner, speaking in tongues. So there's some historical things you could look up if you were interested in the topic. Now, what's really supernatural is actually, you know, speaking in tongues tends to draw the attention of scoffers. It did from the beginning. And, you know, especially, you know, not all of it may be genuine. And I've seen some things that would cause me concern, and I believe in speaking in tongues. But, you know, there are also the cases where the interpretation of tongues, where two people get the same interpretation of tongues at the same time. Now, that's a bit subjective to try to measure, because, you know, the people I've known who've experienced that gift, they'll get the words for the interpretation and somebody else speaks it out. It's the same thing. That happens with prophecies as well. And with prophecies, prophecy is not just a prediction of the future. In the biblical sense, it's a message from God, whatever the Holy Spirit wants to say. People speaking as they're moved by the Holy Spirit. And of course, if you've been around the block a few times and experiencing spiritual gifts, then you know that, you know, a person may go to one church and get a prophecy, goes to another church, gets the same thing from somebody else who doesn't know the people of the first church. That happens quite a bit. Then there's the prophecies and words of knowledge that contain details about the individual that nobody could know naturally. That sort of thing occurs. So, and of course, healings and things. And those are a bit more, you know, obvious to say that they're supernatural than someone speaking in a tongue that you don't understand, or repeating syllables that you don't understand. So just from an empirical standpoint, some of those things that I've witnessed are a bit more supernatural looking, if that's what you're looking for. So I would have to disagree that whether speaking in tongues is supernatural. I would say that yes, genuine speaking in tongues is supernatural. There may be speaking in tongues, or so-called, that is not supernatural, and I would you know, perhaps agree to a certain extent. And there may be a psychological learned speaking in tongues that people of other religions also could do without any, you know, supernatural help. So anybody could just repeat a string of syllables, especially if it's really simple and repetitive, even if they convince themselves that something supernatural is happening. But that doesn't mean that something supernatural doesn't happen, and that occurrences of speaking in tongues are all fake. So anyway, like I say, I've seen a lot more of the, you know, empirically supernatural stuff with words of knowledge, where somebody knows supernaturally other things about other people, and or, you know, I've had that happen where I've known things like that myself, or gotten words for people that I wouldn't have known just from talking, or just from being around them, because they didn't tell me what was going on. So anyway, yeah, thank you for watching the video, and I hope this was informative to you. If you think this is helpful to someone else, please send them the link. Thanks.